Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise tonight to address the border security crisis that is part of daily life in my southern Arizona district in Arizona, Arizona's 8th congressional district. I'm really proud to represent one of the most diverse parts of the entire country. I represent a district that's over 9,000 square miles and is one of 10 U.S. Mexico border districts. The U.S. Mexico border has changed a lot over the years. I'm a third-generation Arizonan. I represent a lot of people in my district who are multi-generational Arizonans. After decades of building up the U.S. Mexico border in California and in Texas, there has been a systematic funneling of illegal immigration, the flow of traffic illegally through southern Arizona. This has become the most porous part of the U.S. Mexico border. So today, together, my constituents live in a situation on the front lines of a national border security crisis. We live and breathe the federal government's failure to secure the border with Mexico. And every day, my constituents are subjected to home invasions and to burglaries and to cut water lines and to graffiti, an unbelievable amount of garbage and trash that's left behind by illegal immigrants who are crossing through the border, and by people increasingly who are drug smugglers, people that are human smugglers, the cutting of fences, the threats and intimidation by armed smugglers, and the violence that they're experiencing on their own land, on their own ranches, their own property. In this hour, I'm going to talk about action that I and others have taken along the U.S.-Mexico border here in Washington. But more importantly, I'm going to talk about the lives of the constituents that I represent, the people of Cochise County, the ranchers who live on the U.S.-Mexico border. It's always been my belief that if the decision makers here in Washington, if they could hear the stories, the impact that illegal immigration has on the lives of my constituents, that there would be greater action here in Washington. That decision makers, elected officials, people in the administration, policymakers, that they would move to greatly enhance the security along the U.S.-Mexico border. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. I think it's important to begin this hour with the most heart-wrenching story of all. The tragic death of Robert Krentz, a fourth-generation rancher whose family has been on his land for over 100 years. Actually, the Krentz family has had their ranch before even Arizona achieved statehood. On March 27th, Rob Krentz, who was working on his ranch, was murdered by an assailant, who was later tracked to the Mexico border. He and his dog were both ruthlessly murdered on his land. They were left to die. They were shot. Law enforcement officials believe that Rob was killed by a smuggler. Next to me is a photograph of Rob and his brother Phil, the two Krentz brothers. This was run on the front page of a local newspaper, the Tucson Weekly. And frankly, the image tells it all. You see the two brothers, you see them in the tack room, their hands, their boots, their lives, right there represented. Reporter Leo Banks wrote the accompanying story in which he interviewed Rob's family and the neighbors. Banks wrote the following. He said, "What has to be noted first is the inevitability of what happened. Something like the Krentz murder was coming and everybody knew it. The stories residents told this newspaper, the frustration that they feel trying to keep property and families safe in smuggler-occupied territory, were like a freight train in the night. Down the tracks, you see the faint light coming closer and closer. On March 27th, in Cochise County's Big Country, a mile west of Paramore Crater, the train arrived. The aftershock has been so powerful because the killing exploded the lie about a secure border that Washington, D.C. has been working hard to promote. On its front page, the Tucson Weekly asked the question, will the murder of a respected Cochise County rancher change anything on our border? Mr. Speaker, tonight I ask the same question. Again, will the murder of Robert Krentz on March 27th, a respected rancher in my district, will it change anything on the border? Well, it has. Today, the President has announced the deployment of the National Guard to the U.S.-Mexico border. I knew Rob Krentz. I knew his family. He participated in the meetings that I convened between ranchers and the Border Patrol. He was and is, he was a family man. He was a good neighbor, and he was a friend to all who knew him. He was described as a humanitarian who would give water and aid to illegal immigrants who suffered from heat exhaustion and physical injuries as they trekked from Mexico across his land. He was, like fellow ranchers out in Cochise County, a straight talker, and he, like them, saw their lives changed by the increased flow of illegal immigrants and the drug smugglers. Tonight I will share additional stories about the ranchers in this area, and I will call on my colleagues to join me in demanding that our government step up and do more. The responsibility here in Washington to help protect its citizens. The safety and security and the defense of its citizens should be our primary focus in Washington, D.C.